Welcome to Mental Health Advocacy 101. It's a free online workshop, and this module was developed by yours truly and Marlon Reston. Kung nakita nyo kanina yung ating videos nung umpisa while waiting for our participants to come in. So yun po si Marlon Reston. And we developed this in 2020. Exclusive siya for the volunteers doon sa aming mental health organization. Kasi napansin namin na a lot of people are interested in mental health advocacy, but there's really no handbook or like regulatory body, um, parang ganon. But mental health work is very important and can have great impact if done right. And it's also a very sensitive matter. And the last thing we want to do is harm people by giving wrong information or saying the wrong things. Ayun. So we thought of coming up with this sort of guide. We don't claim that it is a definite guide or this is the authority on the subject, but we hope that it could give some ideas dun sa mga gusto maging mental health advocates on what to do and how to do it. Yeah, so initially we based this largely on the World Health Organization's mental health policy and service guidance package. Pero medyo mahaba yun. I think the initial run was around like 3 hours. We revised it. It underwent several revisions, and we included also some mga practical na topics based on our real world experiences as mental health advocates, and we tried to make it more concise. Yeah, and so with the help of our partner organizations, Seawork and Chest Corps, and with the support of our mother organization, the 100% Attitude Projects, we are happy to be able to share this with you now. And we're so grateful that you took the time to attend today. Okay, so let me give you an overview of our workshop. It's divided into two parts. So for part one, we have these topics. And then in between, we'll have a brainstorming activity using also pair deck. And then for part two, ayan, ito naman ang ating topics. And for most of part one, akong magdi-discuss, and most of part two will be Evita. Pero parang tag team kami dito. So uh, we'll be discussing some specific topics. Yan. Okay ba? Okay so far? Yan. So I hope that's clear. And watch out for the slides with the Pear Deck logo at the bottom. Okay, so let's begin with the mental health situation, and let me call on Evie to discuss this part.
Ayun, hello. If I move it ba, gagalaw din yung ano, yung slide?
Try mo nga.
Oh,
Ayan, okay.
ayan. Oh, it could.
Sige.
Na-amaze din eh, no? So, I don't need to show my video naman, no? Or how does this work?
Okay din lang, if you can.
Testing. Ayun.
Ayan.
Ayun. So, kung may dumaan sa likod ko, hindi kayo namamalik mata, may pusa yan somewhere. Anyway, so, ayun. So, I'm Evie. I'll be the one introducing for yung ano, how mental health for this part. So, part 1 tayo. So, for mental health around the world, it's very common na depression is yung pinaka-leading cause ng disability. Even though, kung minsan iisip lang natin na para, malungkot lang yung taong yun or hindi nyo nakakitaan masyado ng lungkot, nawalan lang ng gana with doing something. And it might be something related to depression. So, yung mga diagnosed lang yung nami-mention dito. So, and then, kaakibat nun is yung suicide, na yun ang isa sa leading cause of death at present among people, young adults, 15 to 29 years old of age. Tapos, kahit na sabihin natin na hindi affected ang mga bata or, they're still too young, it's not an issue talaga na hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na bata pa masyado to have sort of mental health condition. So, children, even as young, I'm not sure kung how young, if we have statistics for that, pero 20% of children around the world have experienced or have mental health conditions. So, despite rin sa progress, kung first world country man or third world country, people with mental health conditions often experience severe human rights violations, discrimination, and stigma. Ayun. So, sa Philippines naman, so, serious siya sa atin ngayon, well, it's always been serious, pero mas napunta siya in the spotlight ngayon kasi dahil nga rin sa pandemic. Ayun, sa atin, ang mental illness is the third most common cause of disability sa Pilipinas. Tapos sa Pilipinas, we have the third highest rate of mental disorders in the Western Pacific. So with this din, ang suicide rate din sa atin is mataas, which is at 3.2 per 100,000 people. So are we? Ayun, so we're going for our first slide. So practice natin siya. So can you guess kung ilang psychiatrists ang meron for every 100,000 people sa Philippines? You can go to the other tab now and you can type in your answer. Ayun, meron ng dalawa. Do we have the timer for this ba? Like, ayun, 30 seconds. So once na if you see the timer, once the 30 seconds end, we will lock it will automatically lock and then we'll be able to show your answers in a bit. So kasi considering, di ba, kung may friends kayo na psychiatrist or meron kayong kakilalang psychologist, they are within the range. Pwede nyo ibilang. Yan. 3, 2, 1. Tada! Is it showing na ba? Oops.
Yes, naka-show na. Para siyang graph.
Oo.
Na ito yung mga
Tinutuldok-tuldok.
sagot.
Gusto ko yung optimistic na 100. Gusto ko yan. Pero karamihan is around in... May sumagot ba ng 0 or at least 1? Ano?
Pwede natin makita one by one yung mga sagot. Yan. Teka. Scroll ko ha. Ayun no, may mga 1, di ba? Scroll ba?
For me, hindi. Pero anyway, pwede ko siyang mas-scroll din. May 41. Ayun. Oy, I love people na 100. Pero ayun. So thank you po sa nag-participate. Gusto ko yung na at least we also see na optimistic din and at the same time realistic ang natin. Ang outlook natin in terms of what mental health looks like in the Philippines right now. So next slide natin is, reality is 3.6 million Filipinos ang merong mental, neurological, and substance use disorders sa ngayon. And as much as we want to say na 100 per 100,000 people, hindi pa buong isang psychiatrist per person sa 100,000 people. So we only have 0.41 psychiatrists per 100,000 people. So kung hindi pa kayo decided sa inyong course or gusto niyo lumipat mag-psychiatrist. Pero ayun, so not yet na hindi pa masyado nafo-focus ngayon sa mental health as a healthcare expenditure, pero hopefully we'll get it higher than 5% na nakikita natin ngayon in terms of mental health services. So, and then, sabihin nyo lang kung masyadong mabilis. I mean, please, someone tell me. So, right now, as nabanggit kanina po, we have government initiatives already in place, which is the Republic Act 11036 or the Mental Health Act of 2018. And dito sa Baguio is we have the Baguio Mental Health Care and Developmental Wellness Program Ordinance na na-develop during the pandemic. So as you can see, or maybe kung meron kayo na-encounter, hindi pa siya ganun ka-implemented. There are not a lot of people who actually know that you can get cheaper or free meds sa mga dedicated hospitals. So dito sa Baguio, we have yung sa pharmacy ng Baguio General Hospital, you can get cheaper meds or free meds depending on the medication. Sa Manila naman sa NCMH, pag makita mo lang, like for example, indigent or yung mababa yung income, there are also free meds that are good for at least 3 to 6 months. So, kulang pa sa dissemination that there are some free services na ganito. Pero, it is also worth looking into that we can also advocate for these kinds of um, acts and laws na meron sa Pilipinas. So, mas maraming makikinabang. Ayun. So, as mentioned, and as we are here now, sabi nga rin ni Kuya Marl na hindi rin natin alam kung kailan matatapos ang pandemic. And it's really taking a toll on everyone who is in the country or who is in some way or form na in a hard situation. So, ang pinaka-common na, syempre halos lahat tayo meron tayong na-experience na walan ng relative or ng friend dahil sa COVID. Tapos syempre 'di ba marami rin nawalan ng income. So, may mga nawalan ng trabaho, nawalan ng way para makahanap ng trabaho. So yung mga halimbawa before na never nag-show ng mental health issues, baka nakaka-develop bigla or lumala yung symptoms na nararamdaman nila. Tapos yung siyempre we're all isolated or at least kahit papaano ngayon medyo milder na yung restrictions natin pero siyempre sa kasagsagan, meron pa rin mga iba na bigla nila nag-take into alcoholism or nagkaroon ng other health issues. So, hindi makatulog or nag-increase yung anxiety kasi hindi mo naman alam kung kailan bigla nilang meron palang ka-close mo or ikaw mismo na magka-COVID. So, hindi talaga maalis yun kasi it's a valid fear na meron tayong lahat na we're trying to survive. Tapos hindi natin alam kung paano tayo makapag-survive ng tama. So, we need to educate ourselves and be more aware of what we can do to be prepared and to be able to help. Ayun, so yun, kung nagka-COVID ka pa, is also another concern din sa health mo kasi hindi natin alam kung paano maapektuhan yung katawan, kung merong iba na severe yung naging disability after nagkaroon ng COVID or nagkaroon ng complications or permanent trauma. So ayun, maraming na-halt na mga services. Hindi lang sa mental health, pati mga um, um, critical health services and actually pati physical. So it comes hand in hand na hindi sila nakapunta sa psychiatrist nila, hindi sila nakapunta sa doctor nila kasi nga na-limit sila na hindi sila makalabas or they can't afford to go to the doctor. Ayun. So sa buong bansa, 93% ng countries ang tumaas ang demand for mental health services. And next natin is, ayun. This is the next paired question. Hindi pala ito, next. So, ayun. So, as students, non-medical professionals, or lay people, how can we help improve the state of mental health in our communities? So, that's the biggest question. Kasi parang it's an open struggle na parang kung minsan hindi natin alam kung kanino tayo lilingon or saan tayo pupunta. So, ayun. So, as this whole workshop is about, is we go by being mental health advocates. So, ayun. So, to introduce us sa mental health advocacy, we have Ate Luffy.
Ayun, salamat, Evie. So, yun ang ating background. Bakit natin kailangan ng mental health advocacy? Because the situation around the world and in our country is really not so good. So, ano bang magagawa natin? So, like Evie said, it's through mental health advocacy. Whether you are a non-mental health professional, you belong to another field, you can be a mental health advocate. And for those naman na nasa mental health profession, mas mabuti pa, 'di ba? Kasi sila yung may mga kaalaman, 'yan. Pinag-aralan nila talaga ang mental health, so I think they are also best equipped to advocate for mental health. Okay, so first, sagutin naman natin what is mental health advocacy. But before that, okay, yan, tama pala. So, yan. So, ano ba ang mental health advocacy? So, this is a relatively new concept. So kung i-compare natin siya sa ibang advocacies and social movements like civil rights, feminism, or yung suffrage rights, or yung karapatan bumoto, bata pa ang mental health advocacy. And ang definition niya ay it includes a variety of different actions aimed at changing the major barriers to achieving positive mental health. So very important that we remember this definition. Babalikan natin yan later on. Yan. And yung barriers na sinasabi na humahadlang sa mental health include structures and attitudes. So when we say structures, ito yung mga policies, practices in place, mga norms. And when we say attitudes, ito naman yung stigma, yan, stereotyping and false assumption. So yun yung both those two kinds of barriers prevent us from achieving positive mental health. Okay, balik tayo sa kung paano nagsimula ang mental health advocacy. So while the advocacy or the movement itself didn't really take off until 1960s, we can trace its roots back to two people nung early 1800s, late 1800s and early 1900s. So the first of them is Dorothea Dix, who was a 19th century activist in the US, and she challenged the norms in the field of medicine and advocated for people with mental disorders. So Dorothea Dix was instrumental in the opening of yung first generation ng American mental health asylums through intense and sustained lobbying. So nilobby niya talaga yung Congress, yung mga state legislatures para maipabukas yung mga mental health asylums. And then si Clifford Beers naman, in 1909, he founded the National Committee for Mental Hygiene. Ngayon, this is known as the National Mental Health Association. So I think this is yung oldest na mental health association in the US. So he is credited as the founder of the mental hygiene movement. O yun pa yung tawag nila noon, mental hygiene. And he himself was a patient. He was institutionalized for 3 years. So tumira siya sa mental asylum for 3 years. And he was one of the earliest client advocates. So he led national and international efforts para ma-improve yung institutional care, since 'di ba alam niya kung what goes on there, having been a patient himself. And he challenged the stigma of mental illness and promoted mental health. Yan. So sila yung earliest na known na mental health advocates. Okay, so paano naman nag-develop itong advocacy movement? So yun nga, it began when the rights of persons with severe mental disorders were defended, particularly those who experienced long stays in mental hospitals like Clifford Beers. And it was over the past 50 years that their families and then the patients themselves became increasingly involved in the advocacy movement through their organizations. So it's good to note na yung movement, the mental health advocacy movement, was started by the patients and their families. Yan. So mga ordinary people then who saw for themselves the need for change and did something about it. And yeah, so in the last 30 years, the concept of mental health advocacy has been broadened to include people with relatively mild mental disorders and the promotion and protection of mental health in the general population. So hindi na lang siya para sa mga institutionalized, sa mga dinadala sa mental health asylum. Meron ng acknowledgement that everyone, lahat tayo, may mental health that should be promoted and protected. And sino naman ang mga groups engaged in mental health advocacy? So unang-una yung gumawa ng advocacy mismo, yung people with mental disorders and their families. We also have non-governmental organizations. So either yung mga NGOs na ito, either they include only mental health professionals, kunwari mga psychiatrists lahat, or interdisciplinary with members from diverse areas. So, pwede din yun. And we have general health workers and mental health workers. Generally, less involved sila sa advocacy initiatives than the first two groups. But because, of course, they engage with people with mental health disorders, mga clients nila, so they can feel empathy towards them, and then they could also advocate for their clients. And the last group is policymakers and planners. So ito na yung mga departments of health, mga ministries of health, specifically yung mental health section nila. And they play a very important role sa advocacy kasi sila mismo yung makaka-implement ng advocacy actions directly. Yan. And I'm guessing maybe most of us fall into one of these categories or one or two. Ayan. So these are the groups engaged in mental health advocacy. So maybe you're wondering, ano bang ambag ng mental health advocacy? Ano na bang nagawa nito? So this is according to the World Health Organization's data gathered from around the world. So ito na daw yung mga nagawa ng advocacy. So the placing of mental health on government agendas, improvements in policies and practices of governments and institutions, changes made to laws and government regulations, meron ding improvements in the promotion of mental health and the prevention of mental disorders. Yeah, the protection and promotion of rights and interests of persons with mental disorders and their families, and there have been improvements in mental health services, treatment, and care. Okay, so ang dami na palang nagawa ng advocacy around the world. Okay. So for our part 3, ang tanong naman natin is, what does it mean to be a mental health advocate? So alam na natin about advocacy and its history, what it is. Sa sarili naman natin, ayan. So ano bang ibig sabihin ng pagiging mental health advocate? Ayan, so ating Pear Deck slide, Pear Deck alert. You may go back to your Pear Deck tab and answer this question. What comes to your mind when you hear the phrase mental health advocate? Ano bang naiisip nyo? It doesn't have to be, like a long explanation. Kung ano talaga yung like first na
Napunta sa isip nyo.
yes, yan. So, aantayin natin ang kanilang sagot. How many seconds will we give? 30? Is that enough?
Siguro 60 naman.
Okay, sige.
Medyo, para
Medyo
kasi
mahirap
magta-type pa sila
mag-type.
eh.
Naisip na
Kasi
nila pero
baka,
ayan.
baka
Nagta-type.
naka-mobile din or ano.
True. Diba? Tapos mali-mali na yung na-spell kasi nagmamadali. So don't worry,
Carry lang naman.
uh, we have 43 seconds pa.
Saka no judgment naman kung typo man o hindi.
Yeah.
Ganyan naman talaga pag workshop.
Yes, even yung nasa Facebook Live natin ngayon, you can answer this sa comments, even if you're not on Pear Deck. And then later we'll go back to it na lang and then we'll comment or something like that. Yeah, 20 seconds. Let's key in our answers. Okay,
Sakto lang
ayan.
pala.
Marami-rami na ang sumagot. Sakto lang pala yung ating 1 minute. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's see kung
Yan.
mapapakita natin lahat ng response. Your answers are locked. Ba't kaya hindi nasa-scroll? Nagsa-scroll ba sa screen mo?
Ako masuscroll ko siya pero sa viewers, I'm not sure.
Ay ganitong view na lang. Okay, so sabi they give awareness to the people who are in need, especially mentally. Ayan, provide psychosocial support. They are the ones who help those in need or have a problem in mental health, giving importance about your mental health and of other people. Someone who strives to bring attention to mental health issues and come up with solutions. Yan, group of medical healthcare professionals. Ito maganda, supporter, helper. Yeah.
Yes.
Learning to be the bigger person. I agree ako dyan. Ayan. A person who talks about mental health issues to give people knowledge about the different problems it brings. Ganda. Okay, beneficial, raises awareness, not just a day, but in everyday living. Yun parang sinasabuhay, di ba? Loving self and others, empathize and support. Yan, groups, they help and guide individuals on mental health concerns. They also disseminate information and awareness to people. Yeah, they promote seeking medical help.
Mm-mm.
Hero. I love that. Hero. Ayan. Individuals that believe they can make a difference and improve the lives of people living with mental illness by using their voice to fight stigma, raise awareness.
Yes.
Ayun, ang gaganda ng mga sagot ng ating participants. Yung iba baka
Nabitin.
naabutan ng time limit,
Oo.
oo.
Share
Ayun.
lang.
Pero yeah, carry lang. You can just type it here or sa comment section natin. Ayun.
Yan.
So, maraming salamat sa inyong response. Tama lahat yan. Okay. So, let's go to our next slide. Okay. So, kinuha natin yung dictionary definition ng advocate. So, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, an advocate is a person who publicly supports or recommends a particular cause or policy. And kumuha din tayo ng mga definition ng mental health advocate from different people. Um, nakita natin sa internet. Ayan, so sabi ni Therese Borchardt, a mental health advocate is anyone who is a voice for those suffering from depression, anxiety, or any other disorder who hopes to disseminate a message of hope and support. Ayan, marami tayong nabasa na may support, diba? Ganyan. So next is sabi naman ni Tikea Blackman, a change agent, someone who educates his or her community on mental health, reduces the stigma, and fights for change in the behavioral system. And sabi ni Dr. Sally Spencer Thomas, meron actually spectrum of engagement. So yung ally, that is someone who feels connected to the issues but might not act on their feelings. Ayan. Parang ano din sila, they agree with what is being said or with the cause, but then they don't really actively do something about it. And then for advocate naman, ito yung someone who uses their voice to encourage change. And then the activist engages in intentional action to move change along, getting people organized, moving legislation, changing policy. So yun yung pinaka-engaged, 'di ba? Yung activist, which kind of has a bad rap itong term na ito, especially these days. Pero yun yung may pinakamadaming nagagawa actually. So Marl Reston actually considered himself a mental health activist. Yan. So next part, ang ating mental health advocate starter pack. Okay. Baka nakita nyo na ito noon. This is the Mental Health Advocate Starter Pack according to Reddit. Okay, so well, this is satire, but it's worth looking into. So kung makikita nyo dyan, parang it shows toxic positivity. Yan, focusing only dun sa positives, disregarding mental illness. Yan, nakasulat, why don't you reach out? Parang ganang kadali, as if that's the solution to everything. Okay, so ba't ko pinakita ito? So, well, it's sad that mental health advocates have this reputation, at least among Redditors. uh, pero hindi natin sila blame kung ganito nga yung experience nila with people who claim to be mental health advocates. So now we want to present an alternative to this. Hopefully a real one, yeah, real mental health advocate starter pack, which contains the qualities, values, and ethics of someone who we think would be an effective advocate. And so, first of all, an advocate should have a commitment to learning. Yan, napaka-importante. And yung ating information and knowledge should come from reliable sources. Yan, verifiable sources naman. Sana to make sure that the information that we get is factual and accurate. Ba, ngayon madaming fake news, madaming disinformation, hindi lang sa politika, pati din sa health and mental health. So it's really important to read up, ayan, or watch mga webinars, if that's more your thing. Join workshops like now, so that you can increase your knowledge and understanding kung ano ba talaga ang pinaglalaban natin, di ba? So you cannot really fight for something if you don't know what it is in the first place. And kung nakatapos ka na ng isang libro, feeling mo, ano na, alam mo na lahat, well, learning never stops. So it's a continuous process. There's always new information, and especially yung mga studies and breakthroughs in psychology and medical science. Diba? Maya't maya may mga lumalabas na bagong studies. Even in language, what's politically correct or what isn't, what's offensive, what's not, nagbabago din yan over time. And this will be actually discussed later on. Yan. So now we have another Pear Deck slide. Okay. So here are some basic health information we should know as advocates. Ito yung parang pinaka-basic. And which of these questions can you answer without searching sa Google? Okay, yung alam nyo na, put a dot in the box. You can draw, di ba? Pero para mas maayos, dot na lang ang ilagay nyo dun sa box nung bawat question na alam nyo ang sagot. Okay. So we'll have, ito madali lang to, 30 seconds lang siguro, no?
Oo, okay na yung 30 seconds for that.
Okay na. Di naman magsusulat. Idadot niya lang. Pwede niyong palitan yung kulay ng ano nyo,
Oh,
ng
gawin yung
pang-dot
purple,
niya.
pink, orange, yellow.
Your favorite color para makikita natin kung alin doon yung sa inyo. Okay. So, lagay nyo lang dyan yung dot. Alin yung masasagot nyo. Honestly, ha? Hindi naman tayo nang judge dito. Hindi tayo nang judge. Para lang ma-reflect din natin, di ba? Okay. Nakalock na ang ating screen. We'll show our responses. I-collate na lang natin. Ayan. Kita ba natin? Alright. So, madami, no? Ang dots natin. So, ito yung mga questions. What is mental health? What are the signs of a mental disorder? How common are mental health problems? What causes mental disorders? Are mental disorders curable? And how can a person recover from a mental health problem? So, hindi natin sasagutan yan ngayon. Kung hindi nyo alam yung sagot sa isa sa mga tanong na ito, research. Ayan. Get into the habit of researching. So that's a habit we should have as advocates. Yan. Kung may hindi ka naiintindihan na term, yan, i-search mo lang. So, thank you so much sa mga sumagot nito. O, nakakatuwa naman na, di ba? Ang dami din na may alam kung ano yung mga sagot sa katanungan na ito. Okay, good job. So, we'll move on to our next slide. Ayan, stress lang natin. So, mental health does not equal mental illness. Parang baliktad ata yung not equal sign. Pero, kasi, um, some people confuse the two or use them interchangeably. So, may misconception na mental health automatically equals illness. So, kapag sinabi mo mental health, sakit agad yung naiisip nila. Pero, that's not really the case. So, mental health is a state of being and it is a spectrum like this. So, meron kang healthy, reacting, injured, and ill. So, for healthy and reacting, um, pwede makuha yan with self-care and social support. If it's injured and ill, the other side of the spectrum, ito na yung needing professional help. Okay, so hindi din naman lahat ng mental struggles need professional help. Meron yung madadaan through self-care and support. Pero kung ano na talaga, injured and ill, so need na talaga ng professional help doon. So yun po yung difference ng mental health sa mental illness. Ito yung mental illness, yung the red box here. Okay, so next Ito, gusto din natin stress, sabi ni Aristotle, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So as we learn more about mental health, the more we will realize the extent and limits of the help we can give as advocates. So, pag marami tayong natutunan, ma-realize natin na madami pa tayong hindi alam. And we should know when we should refer to a mental health professional. So for us na hindi mental health professionals, it's good to know, for example, yung mga signs and symptoms of someone who might have a clinical disorder, but we can never diagnose. Ayan. So ang pwede lang po mag-diagnose yung psychiatrist or a psychologist who is trained in diagnosing. And ayan, you should never also prescribe meds. Anyway, hindi naman mabibili without a prescription. Or we should not share meds. So for example, sinabi nung advocate na, oh, this antidepressant worked well for me, bigyan din kita. Ayan, hindi po pwede yon. So if you read up on mental health, so you'll know na every case is different, and let's leave the diagnosing and treatment to the professionals. Ayan. So that's also one of the important things about educating ourselves. Okay, let's go on to the next thing in our starter pack. We have empathy, compassion, and understanding. Yeah, so if we can't diagnose, we can't prescribe, what can we do? So it's simple. So be a friend, be someone's support system, provide moral support, provide them with information about mental health, yung resources, kung saan sila pwede pupunta na mental health professionals. And this really requires empathy and understanding. And kasama na din dito yung being inclusive and respectful of others' views, beliefs, lifestyles, and identities. Oh, sabi nga sa TV show, bawal ang judgmental. So being advocates, it's best to withhold judgment. Although, di ba nga, we all have our personal beliefs, some of which we feel very strongly about. But it's a fact that people are diverse. Ayan. And ang goal natin is to help, and we can't really help if we judge or lecture the person who comes to us seeking support. Like sasabihin natin, palitan mo kasi yung lifestyle mo, hindi maganda yan. Um, diba? Imagine how the person would feel na pumunta siya sa'yo for support, tapos ginudge mo lang siya. So it's best to listen to understand, not to respond. Okay. And we also have healthy positivity. Ayan, yung nasa Reddit kasi it's toxic positivity. So, ang gusto naman natin dito ay healthy, the healthy kind. So, the difference is toxic positivity is the idea that being positive and only positive is the best way to live. Pero yung healthy positivity is trying to look on the bright side of things, but also accepting and experiencing difficult emotions when they arise. So, hindi natin isasantabi itong mga negative feelings and emotions. Natin isasantabi ang illness. We do accept them. These are realities. Ayan. But we still try to look on the bright side of things. And yun nga, we manage expectations if we have healthy positivity. Ayan. Moving on to the next. So we also must have a spirit for collaboration. So bakit? Although may mga tao naman na gumagawa ng advocacy on their own, and they're very effective at it, but it's also good to collaborate with other people or organizations. So kasi 'di ba, we all have our skills and talents, and if we put our heads together and work together, we can possibly do more. Yan. And ano ba yung mga areas na pwede nating i-collaborate? Okay, so for example, awareness campaigns, pag-develop ng mga IEC materials, information, education materials, and then we also have skills development. For example, psychological first aid and counseling trainings. Pwede natin pagtulungan mga yan. And then we also have referral system, we can make a directory of mental health service providers in our area, in our city or region. If we collaborate with diba, other cities, other municipalities, we can come up with this directory for the benefit of everyone. And then meron din tayong policy advocacy. So ito naman yung nagpo-push tayo ng mga batas na ikakabuti ng mental health. Yan. And this is the last one we have, but possibly the most important. So knowing the why of your advocacy. So why is this important? Um, well, maybe you have lived experience or have a loved one who has mental health condition. Um, and alam mo kung ano yung pinagdadaanan ng isang tao na may mental health condition. And of course, you don't want that to happen to other people, or at least, diba, make it easier for other people. So yung ganitong klaseng why natin, so ito yung magiging guiding light and driving force ng ating actions as an advocate. So, madaming challenges pagdating sa advocacy. Totoo yan. Mamaya makita natin kung ano yung some of the challenges. But your why will keep you grounded and it will keep you going. Yan. So, sana ang why natin ay hindi lang para sumikat at magkaroon ng followers. Okay? Sana mas malalim naman than that. So for me personally, ang aking why is because I was diagnosed with clinical depression in 2007. Oh, di ba? Ang tagal na. Um, buhay na ba kayo ng 2007? Oo, ang saklap, no? Hindi pa kayo buhay, tas depressed na ako. Pero yun, since being a mental health warrior myself, I've gone through some difficult times, and naisip ko if I can do something to help, why not, 'di ba? Yung mga katulad ko na may mental health condition. Ayan. So that is the why of my advocacy. So, pwede nyo rin i-type. Yan, hindi siya paradex slide, but you can also answer this in the chat box or our comment section. Ano ba ang why ng inyong advocacy? Why do you want to fight for mental health? Okay. Okay pa ba tayo? We'll move on to the next part. Okay. Malapit na tayo sa ating brainstorming. Sana okay pa kayo. Anong oras na ba? 3. So, we'll discuss now the barriers to mental health. So, if you remember, ang ating definition ng mental health advocacy, review lang natin, it includes a variety of different actions aimed at changing the major barriers to achieving positive mental health. So it's two parts, di ba? Meron tayong different actions, meron din tayong major barriers. So for this part, we'll talk about those major barriers. Okay, marami sila actually. Pag mabasa natin itong buong list, parang nakakapanghina. But there's hope later on sa ating advocacy actions. So here are some of the barriers. There's a lack of mental health services. So gaya nga nung sinabi ni Evie kanina, 0.41 psychiatrists for every 100,000 Filipinos. Talagang kulang ang ating mental health professionals. And kung meron man, they are concentrated in urban areas. Ayan. So mahirap talaga maka-access ng services. And then there's the unaffordable cost of mental health care. Mahal magkonsulta, mahal ang gamot. Stigma associated with mental disorders resulting in exclusion. There's a lack of equality between mental health and physical health, lalo na ngayong pandemic. 'Di ba, may focus tayo on physical health, and tama lang naman kasi we want to keep ourselves healthy, pero sana hindi nakakalimutan yung mental health din. Okay, and then meron din tayong lack of poor quality of care in hospitals and other psychiatric facilities. There's also a need for alternative consumer-run services, and service providers do not give consumers responsibility or freedom of choice. When we say pala consumer, ito ay consumer of mental health services. Yan, or we also call them mental health warriors or people living with mental disorders. So hindi yung consumer na ano lang, bumibili sa tindahan. So consumer of mental health services po ito. Okay, akala nyo yan lang? No, meron pa tayong second slide ng barriers. So there's also lack of information about treatments. There's little or no community participation, dala na din ng stigma. Violations of human rights of persons with mental disorders. So including seclusion and restraint. May mga kwento na kinukulong daw sa kulungan ng aso yung person with mental disorder kasi hindi maintindihan ng family niya kung anong nangyayari sa kanya. So, kinukulong siya dun sa kulungan ng hayop. So there's also, of course, violence and physical abuse towards people with mental disorders. And then, meron din lack of housing and employment for persons with mental disorders, absence of promotion and prevention in schools, workplaces, and neighborhoods, and insufficient implementation of mental health policy, plans, programs, and legislations. Gaya na lang nung nasabi kanina, we have the mental health law, we have our ordinance, pero hindi pa na-implement fully. So parang wala din lang effect. Okay. So we thought about giving special focus dito sa barriers on stigma. So ano ba ang stigma? Stigma is when someone sees you in a negative way because of your mental health condition. And discrimination naman is when someone treats you in a negative way because of your condition. So may action na doon. And stigma and discrimination can make mental health problems worse and stop a person from getting the help they need. Kung napanood nyo kanina yung Marl's memos, he talked about stigma and how that prevents people from seeking help. Okay. Bear deck alert. Ayan, meron ulit tayong sasagutan. So what stereotypes have you heard about people with mental disorders? Okay, probably may narinig na kayo about people with mental disorders na sinasabi ng ibang tao. So, isulat nyo lang dito. Titignan natin, di ba? Kung ano ba yung mga stereotypes na sinasabi. So, let's have, ano kaya, Evie? A minute?
Yeah, I think a minute kasi baka
Oo.
mamaya marami-rami pala siya.
Oo. Ayan. So, you can start answering now. Um, and we'll read the responses later on. Okay, so stereotype nga pala, so ito yung fixed idea, image, or belief that many people have of a particular type of person or thing, but which is often not true in reality and may cause hurt and offense. So,
Mm-mm.
ayun, parang ano lang siya, overgeneralization, ganun, over simplification of a group of people. That's not necessarily true. Okay, so let's see, 20 seconds left. Ayan, ang dami nang nagta-type. Okay, yan. Oo, madami din dito na na-encounter ko na rin. Hindi naman sinabi sa akin directly, pero
What you hear about other people or
yeah,
pag
oo.
nabanggit mo palang, iyon.
Mhm. Ayun, time's up na pala. Salamat. So let's have our responses. Yun lang hindi ko nasa-scroll, hindi yata nasa-scroll sa ating screen, no? Pero
Mm.
nakita naman nila na ano 'to, um, mahaba yung scroll dito sa side. So hindi lang natin maipakita lahat. Anyway, we'll just read them out loud for all of you. So they tend to be villains as portrayed in media, e.g. movies. Oh, si ano, si sino yun? Yung kalaban sa Batman?
Joker.
Joker. Oh.
Sorry. Nati-change pala if you click a star answer, yun lang yung mapapakitang answer.
Ah,
Ayun.
talaga? Okay, ayan.
Napindot ko siya.
Pati kami ni Evie in-explore pa din namin ang ano, pair deck. Sabay-sabay lang tayo. Okay. May tililing. Ayan. They are dangerous, lonely. It's all in your mind. Yung sinasabihan lagi. Lazy, just want attention, faking it. Violent, unproductive. So people with mental health disorder can't function well in everyday living or they can't excel because of their disorder. Okay, crazy, buwang, nasisiraan ng ulo, malalim ang pinagdadaanan. Yan, meron din crazy. Madami yata dito.
Maraming crazy.
Crazy. I heard others saying na
Maarte.
pag-iinarte, ayan,
Mm.
they are hard to handle. Insane, kulang sa pansin. Yun din common thread na yung attention, seeking
Oo.
attention, kulang sa pansin. Ayan, crazy din, kaartehan, it's all in the mind, incapacitated, ayan. Drama lang yan. Baliw, yan. Itulog mo lang yan. Ayan.
Ito ang answer na to. Wait. So,
Sige, pwede
yan.
mong i-ano.
People with mental health disorder can't function well on everyday living or they can't excel because of their disorder.
Okay, tama, tama yan. Isa yan sa mga stereotypes, di ba? Pag
Mm-mm.
sinabing may mental disorder, right away they think, parang hindi na functional, di ba? Okay, so salamat sa inyong mga sagot dito sa ating Pear Deck slide. And yes, tama din yan lahat. Naririnig natin yan. So ipakita lang natin din ito. Basically, nandito din yung mga sinabi kanina, yung mga sagot. So here are the common misconceptions about people with mental disorders. So ang dami niyan. Nabanggit na yung iba. Um, Babasahin ko na lang yung mga hindi na-mention. Yun, incompetent to marry and raise children. Mm. Out of control. Yun, yung unable to work, unable to function, always in need of supervision. Um, Increasingly unwell throughout life. Yan, paggrabe. Possessed by demons, kaya
Yun,
inaano,
nasapian daw.
nasapian, kaya ano tawag doon, yung papalabasin yung
Exercise.
exorcise. Yan. In need of hospitalization, recipients of divine punishment.
Mhm.
Ayun pa. Okay, pinarusahan ka kasi hindi ka mabuti, gano'n. So, of course, we want to
These are
stress
all
these are, yes,
stereotypes.
stereotypes. These are all misconceptions. Dito pala sa Baguio, 'di ba, kapag or sa Cordillera, ano, bagtit, 'yan. Nalukay ti tornilyo, at dahil kulang na, mga gano'n. So, this might seem harmless if you just say it na words lang naman eh. Pero language kasi influences thinking, which in turn influences behavior. So if this language prevents someone from seeking the help they need, then it could be a matter of life and death. 'Di ba? Pag-isipan niyo 'yon. Hindi siya nag-seek ng help kasi ayaw niyang matawag ng mga ito yung nasa listahan natin. At nag-worsen na ang kanyang condition and could end in suicide. So, hindi natin pwede sabihin na salita lang yan, language lang yan. No, language can really perpetuate stigma. And if used correctly naman, language could also be suicide prevention. So yun yung gusto natin na iparating when it comes to this. And also later, ayan, sa part ni Evie, in the second part, we'll talk more about language. Okay, so next naman, culture and mental health. So, stigma around depression and other mental illness can be higher in some cultural groups and often is a major barrier when accessing mental health services. So, halimbawa, Filipinos tayo, we feel more comfortable seeking help from friends and family than professionals. Oh. And then, a sense of resilience and self-reliance, binibida natin tuwing may sakuna. Yeah, but it could also work against us because they lead us to utilize mental health care only as a last resort. Diba? Sasabihin natin, kaya pa yan, kinakaya pa yan. Pero paano kung hindi na pala? So, but on the flip side naman, meron ding cultural practices na nakakatulong. Yan. So, isa ito sa studies ni Ma'am Cynthia, ang ating nag-share ng welcome remarks kanina. So about psychosocial mechanisms in the Cordillera, meron tayong mga cultural practices like inayan, kasiyana, sa Cordillera, which could be helpful for people. Um, para siyang something to do with yung support of the community. Ganon. So culture in itself is not a barrier. Depende din siya actually kung anong klaseng beliefs and practices yon specifically. Okay. Okay pa ba tayo? Sa Google Meet, wala yung react, thumbs up react. Okay, so anyway, we are now on our advocacy actions. Then we'll do a quick brainstorming. Okay, so sabi sa advocacy action, so ito na yung second part of our definition. We learned all about the barriers. Now let's talk about the advocacy actions. Sabi ni Margarita Tartakovsky, there's no one way to advocate. It really depends on what's important and inspiring to you and what you feel comfortable with. Ayan. So, hindi natin pwede diktahan na, dapat ganito ka ito ang gawin mo as an advocate. So, iba-iba din yan. So, what we feel comfortable with, what matters to us, what's important to us, yun yung ating basis ng paggawa ng advocacy actions. Okay, so ano ba yung mga pwede nating gawin? So first of all, awareness raising, ito yung madami na ginagawa natin ngayon. So pagkakaroon ng mga webinars, seminars, yan, to raise awareness on mental health. Then we also have information, education, and training, like yung pagsali ng psychosocial first aid training, mga ganyan. Meron din contribution to and involvement in policy making and services. So, pwede din kayong umattend kunwari ng mga public consultation. Ito yung ginawa din ng mga orgs natin nung ginagawa yung Baguio Mental Health Ordinance. Sumali tayo sa public consultation, binigay natin yung mga suggestions natin. Ayan, so get involved. And mutual help. Ayan, sa mga support groups, di ba? We help each other, tayong mga fellow mental health warriors. Then you also have counseling, mediating, and defending. Okay, and another advocacy action is also denouncing. Ayun, denouncing. So for example, kung merong celebrity, may sinabi siya na false or inaccurate information about mental health, kunyari sabi niya, gawa-gawa lang naman yun eh, or pangmayaman lang yung depression, hindi natin papalampasin yun. So we should call this out and take it as an opportunity na ituwid itong misconception. So, yun. So, sabihin natin na that's not right and ito actually yung tama. So that we can educate, take that opportunity to educate people. And then we also have developing alternative services. So when we say um, alternative services, so outside of psychiatric and psychological services, may iba pang help na pwedeng makatulong sa mental health warriors. Okay. So now we have these examples of advocacy actions like getting training as a counselor, organizing mental health awareness events, starting a blog, Facebook page, podcast, support group. Okay, plug natin yung podcast ng The 100% Attitude Project. Makinig po kayo ng podcast. Lalabas bukas ang second episode on mental health topics then. And then volunteering for a local mental health organization, sharing your own experiences. Ayun, kung ikaw ay may lived experience of mental disorder. So you can help people understand what it's like to live with a disorder, and you can help people who are struggling, and then you can also strengthen yourself as an individual because you gain insight and perspective from sharing your experience. Although word of caution din lang, make sure you're ready to share your experience. You're prepared for, inaisip mo yung possible consequences like response from friends, family, or your work. And it could also be triggering. So in my experience, kasi before nag-share din ako about my mental health journey, and then afterwards, parang I feel so drained, and parang hinalungkat ko ulit yung past nung kwento ko lahat yon, and then I'd sort of feel very bad, natitrigger din ako afterwards. So I said I do less of that. But for some, it could be very cathartic. Ayan. And then it's all about finding your niche. So kung saan ka magaling, whether it's public speaking, fundraising, managing volunteers, or performing. So kahit alin dyan na gusto mong gawin and you feel like you would do good at it, then do that. Okay. Okay, we have our brainstorming activity now, which we will call the three towers. Okay, so naaral na natin yung barriers to mental health. Naaral na din natin yung advocacy action. Now, gusto ko na mag-brainstorm tayo ng specific program, project, or campaign basing on what we have learned so far. Okay? So, halimbawa, pipili tayo ng specific barrier. So, yun ang lack of housing and employment as an example here. Pipili din tayo ng advocacy action, developing alternative services. So yung program na may isip natin is supported employment for mental health warriors. Tutulungan natin silang humanap ng trabaho. Something like that. Okay ba? Alright. So ito ang ating pair deck slide. So, ipapakita natin dyan lahat ng barriers para makapili kayo. So, parang magmi-mix and match kayo, di ba? So, pipili ka ng barrier, pipili ka ng advocacy
Course of
action.
action.
Yeah, kung ano yung sa tingin mo would address that barrier. And then, yung specific na pwedeng gawin. So, this could be anything. Hindi specifically yung gagawin mo on your own. It could be um,
A suggestion
something.
for local
Yeah, a
organizations
suggestion
din.
for organizations, kahit na bongga yan.
Mm.
Basta,
Ideas
nagbe-brainstorm
are
lang naman tayo.
ideas.
Yeah, 'di ba? Who knows, magawa yan later on. Yan. So, we will give you, ano kaya, Evie? 3
Maximum ba
minutes?
natin? 3 minutes, no?
Oo, max na yan
Oo,
eh.
three
Okay.
minutes.
All right. So, we'll have 3 minutes. And because gusto natin na hindi naman boring habang nag-aantay. May pa-music tayo.
Go,
Sige,
go.
antayin natin yung mga sagot nyo, ha? And 0.
Ding, ding. Ayun.
Answers are locked. And let's show our responses now. Okay. Tama, isa-star na lang ni Evie para yung binabasa ko ay yun ang
Ito.
mag-a-appear.
Ito.
Okay. Sabi, personally, I work and study in the church field, and I've noticed that religion and faith play a big role in either strengthening or an obstacle in mental health. I would love to find ways and programs in sharing info on mental health in church to lessen the stigma. Okay, ang
Mm-mm.
ganda. Oo nga. Kasi that's very true. It could be an obstacle or it could strengthen. And madami din people who, ano, 'di ba, who find uh, comfort and support sa
Oo.
church. So maganda na i-strengthen talaga
Parang
ang
kilala ko
ano.
kung sino yung nag-ano niya na. Pero anyway.
Okay.
Ayun, ito pa isa.
Sige.
So
Ano?
pag naka-star, magtatabi sila. Okay. Learning
Mm,
along the way.
oo nga eh. Yan, so an affordable cost of mental health, yung barrier, developing alternative services, yung action. So a certain org may be able to conduct mental health drive, wherein they could invite health professionals willing to provide service for those who cannot avail it. Ayun, oo. So maganda na, 'di ba, yung mga mental health professionals na ano din, advocates din. So they would be
Mm-mm.
willing na ano, to provide their services free or discounted. Yan, maganda. So maganda mag-collaborate diyan, 'di ba? Okay. So next, saan ba? Barrier and affordable cost of mental health care advocacy action policy making. Yung program is free consultation and treatment to any mental health conditions. Yun, maganda, di ba, if we can lobby yung gantong legislation. Or actually, nasa mental health law na din, pero kailangan nang i-implement.
Oo,
Pero
kailangan na
maganda
siya
yon.
ma-strengthen,
Mm,
kumbaga na. We are pointing awareness that this is available. So, pwedeng ano, paki-push siya,
yes.
ganun.
Yun. So, pero oo, maganda yon. And that's very effective pag policy siya talaga. 'Di ba?
Mm-mm.
So, kailangan siya sundin ng bawat city. Yan. Okay. That's a nice one. So, next, lack of mental health service, contribution to an improvement of policy making.
Ayun
Yun
din.
din. So,
Same.
similar sila. Okay. Ano pa bang meron dyan? So, stigma, mutual help, support group that is a safe space for people to open up and talk about their problems. Ayun. Kasi maganda din talaga yung mutual support or we also call it peer support, 'di ba? Kasi we are
Ito.
tayong mental health warriors, we could be in different stages of our mental health journey, 'di ba? Yung mga
Mm.
medyo naka-recover na, then they could help guide yung mga ano, um, in the midst of their battles, kumbaga. Okay, so maganda yun. Aloofness to other people, peer-to-peer support program. Maganda din siguro, no, yung peer support program, i-prepare. Parang ganun. Body
Oo.
system,
Body
kunwari
system siya.
within the mental health support group, yon, may peer support program. Okay, so let's see, lack of equality between mental and physical health, mutual help, everyday routine platforms. Ayan. So, mutual help din. So, pwede siyang nagtutulungan din tayo to give, ano ito, everyday routine platforms, parang mga daily tips, ganun ba yon? Kung anong pwede
Or
natin
parang ano,
gawin.
I think there are puwedeng ma-promote yung mga apps or mga programs na meron silang day-to-day
Ah,
na about, early meditation, tapos kung paano nila ite-tailor fit yung day nila, parang gano'n.
ay
I think
oo.
there are certain apps na parang helps to guide na magkaroon ng organization throughout a person's day. So, parang 1 week ganito,
Hmm,
tapos I think there are ano, friendly ano, kung wala pa puwede tayong gumawa.
oo,
Ano,
maganda nga
suggested
yun.
projects na gano'n
Oo.
na at least makakatulong siya sa day to day. Kasi kung minsan 'di ba, if a person is going through some form of, mental health issue na nakakalimutan na nila yung, to take it literally one day at a time.
Yes.
So ayun, maganda nga yung ganyan, nice.
Tama. Daily, oo. Kailangan ng daily reminder, daily thing that you do to support your mental health. Ganda yun ah. Okay. Nice. So, meron pa ba tayong iba? Anyway, you can also type in your answers and we will uh, read them. Yan. Since we don't have much
Oo.
time now.
So,
Okay.
we move
So,
on.
thank you so much for joining our brainstorming session. Ayan, ganda ng mga suggestions din here. Wait, may isa pa akong nakita. I think this is good also. Teka, as a last one. So, absence of promotion, education, assimilation of seminar to LGU programs. Here in Valenzuela, there is nanay teacher programs so we can
Oh,
assimilate seminars to educate mothers. Oh, yan. Gusto ko yan. Being a mother myself, um, kailangan talaga ng, ano, ng seminars. Yan. For the benefit of their kids. Ayan. So, maganda nga yan, nanay teacher programs. Okay. Thank you for that. And we'll move on now to Evie's part. So please
sure.
take the
Okay.
lead.
Let's go. So anyway, excited lang ano, boom. Ayun, so, balik tayo dun sa diniscuss kanina ni Ate Lofi na where language, plays a big role in mental health. So, there, we're going to be discussing yung mental health terms, symbols, and significant dates. So, let's start with yung language. So, ayun. So, all of us have made these kinds of mistakes at some point na we told someone that they're mentally ill or like, ay, mentally retarded siya. Ay, addict yan. Yun, pinaka-common. Kaya tayo, addict tayo. So, yung mga ganun bagay na um, parang napakadali lang ibitaw na sabihin natin. Pero it's actually probably hurting someone. So, instead of saying mentally ill, say that someone has a mental health diagnosis or meron siyang condition. Kasi as much as it is in our brains na we are having a problem or our brain is sick, it doesn't mean that we are sick with that or we are stuck with it forever. So yung more of na parang halimbawa ay may or halimbawa may kapansanan siya, you don't say naman siya yung kapansanan. So, hindi siya bipolar, may bipolar disorder siya. So, ayun. So, someone who's mentally retarded, should it be called mentally retarded or has a intellectual or developmental disability? Kasi yun naman ang katotohanan na they grew up na, or someone growing up na merong, for example, may autism, or that someone has autism, hindi siya autistic. Tapos yung someone who is an addict or has a substance use disorder. So kasi since nga it's part of a mental problem or a mental illness, a mental health concern, na the person is also relating their issues to drug abuse. So, ayan. So, mental patient is another term that should be avoided kasi parang sabihin mo na, ay, galing siya sa mental. The patient or someone, the person is acquiring or is using a service or is a consumer for mental health or is a warrior or an advocate for mental health. So ayun, is another common thing is saying that someone is suffering from or a victim or afflicted with mental disorders. More of they have a history or is currently being treated or is living with this kind of disorder or disability, or halimbawa living with depression or living with anxiety. Ganon. So and then um, we are hoping to also advocate the use of people first language or PFL, na inuuna natin yung tao, nakikita natin the humanity in the issue, na nade-describe ko ano yung meron sa tao, hindi ko ano siya, yung katulad ng sabi natin kanina na you have something, you are not made by it. Ayan, so yun nga. So bipolar or depressed siya, meron siyang bipolar, meron siyang major depression, or meron siyang schizophrenia. Or yung pinaka common din kasi lagi na nakikita natin sa TV na para this certain person committed suicide, that it was considered before as a crime to kill the self, pero as the knowledge of mental health progressed, na hindi naman siya talaga, like it's not a crime, and it's a sickness. So it's something that would be being helped by someone else, na parang we have gotten to the point now we can change our language to be more aware that it's a completed suicide kasi they had suicidal thoughts and then they came to a point that they took their own life. Tapos yung unsuccessful suicide is more of nag-attempt na magpakamatay pero they survived it. So I attempted suicide, but I'm here now speaking to you as a survivor and mental health warrior, as an example. So ayun, so other things that we consider are how people call themselves as depressed, even though just use sad. If you're just really sad, not clinically diagnosed for being someone with major depressive disorder or someone who has depression, it also helps our own health or our way to perceive a person going through an illness if we can categorize or describe it properly. So a person is not being OC, they're just being very organized with something, or it's how someone is dealing with their anxiety by being able to clean a space or being able to categorize things in a way that makes sense to them. So I'm disheartened. There are a lot of words we can use instead of the clinical terms that could either trigger someone or would influence your own behavior. So ayun. Yung pinaka-common din, crazy, psycho, nuts, insane, or mental. So, ayun, so baka eccentric lang siya. So, ayun, na parang, ay naku, kabaliwan na naman yung ginagawa niya. Yung ganun, it's so simple, so easy to say something like that. And it also comes to a point that we have to be mindful on how we bring about or how we talk about other people or how we talk about ourselves, how we want to organize our thoughts to be able to help someone else or ourselves. Ayan. Tapos, so for example, like, merong lumapit sa'yo na meron siyang issue, or, ayun, so parang, isa sa mga pinaka-common na sinasabi is parang nga, di ba yung sinabi natin kanina, nag-iinapte lang. Pero, it's not selfishness to be able to express what you want to say about how you're feeling exactly about something. If you're angry, or if you're sad, if you're not fine, if someone is going to tell you something about that, it's best na parang it's okay I am here for you. I am safe space. And you can talk to me about your feelings and I will listen to you. It doesn't really mean na you have to always have an advice. That's one of the biggest don'ts na parang okay lang 'yan or ganito lang naman yung nararamdaman mo. Parang o parang you had a bad day or meron ka kasi gano'n. So I mean wala siya diyan pero 'yun, you express that you are there for the person is the biggest thing na pwede mong sabihin sa someone who's going through some mental health issue or someone who is feeling down or someone who just needs someone to listen to. So, I care for you. How can I help in this situation? What kind of help do you need right now? Do you need some help for this situation? Are we problem solving or are we expressing emotions? So, ayun. Kung meron kang kailangan na, halimbawa, mabigat ang dinadala mo ngayon, kailangan mo ba akong bumili ng gamot para sa'yo? Or nakapagluto ka na ba ng dinner? I can cook for you or anything that is within your range to help ease the burden of the person. Ayun, so offer them to find help. Like for example, reach out to us or kung meron kang ibang kilala, gano'n. So, ayun na naiintindihan mo yung tao. You don't have to, you don't, yun ang din na huwag mong gagawin. Don't pretend that you understand when you don't. And it's okay to be vulnerable along with the person na, I want to help you. I want to understand you. So just speak and I will listen. So, ayun. Ayun. So, personally, ako, sobrang, as much as there are people, sorry, na they go to church to pray more often, for me, it's not my thing. And then, it's another thing for mental health advocacy to be open-minded that there are people who are not going to church or not very into religion, they're more into spirituality, or they hold on to some sort of other form of belief or faith that encourages them to be comforted and to be able to have safe space for themselves. But not everyone goes through that. And if you're someone who doesn't go through that, syempre di parang jahe kung maririnig mo yun sa someone, di ba? So, keeping your language neutral then also helps. So, think positive is not always the best thing to say din. Kasi ako as a person na parang ito na nga, negative nga nilalabas ko, tapos ipo-positive ko pa. Pakinggan mo muna ako, di ba? So, ayun, so, parang, as much as we want to be able to help right that moment, being able to be in silence also helps. So, yun, hindi naman siya ganun kasama, other people have it worse. Pero para sa ibang tao, it's the worst thing that could happen to them. Kaya nasabihin mo na, parang, ako kaya ko yan, siya nga hindi niya kaya. So, we want to sit down and be in the same level of the person so they can be able to share accordingly and be able to open up. Kung napanood niyo na yung Red na movie, or I think it's still showing, so it talks about emotion. So it's a nice thing to watch din as a sort of guide. So parang healing generational trauma din siya. Ayan. So, ayun, what can I do to help? You want to talk about it? So yun, it's not being selfish, as mentioned earlier. And even if maybe you had the same experience na halimbawa namatayan ka ng pet or namatayan ka ng loved one and then someone sharing na namatayan sila ng parent and then sabi mo, oo, ganyan talaga pag namatayan. Chill. Just listen to the person kasi not everyone goes through grief the same way. So, it's better na to be able to be grounded and to be able to listen. Yun talaga yung biggest thing. Part of language in speaking is also non-verbal communication. So being there, being felt that you are there for the person is also another part of language. Ayun. So next pala na tayo. So we have a pair deck slide. So we have different symbols for mental health and we'd like to know kung anong mental health symbol ang alam mo. You can use the sketch doodle things. 1 minute ba, Telofi, or just?
Sige, 1 minute. Teka, ako mag-time. Timer, 1 minute.
Ayan.
Ayan. It doesn't have to be, professional artist level type. Basta maintindihan lang kung ano yung symbol na yun. Yan.
Pwede kayo mag-drawing sa any part of the screen. Carry lang siya. Any color, ganun.
Mm-hmm.
Para meron na nagiging puno.
Oo.
Ayun lang.
Nakita kasi namin in real time yung mga mga sagot. Okay. Nice. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Ayan.
Answers are
Tada!
locked. Okay. We can show the responses.
Ano magiging itsura nito?
Pwedeng
Curious
star
din.
siya, di ba? Teka, paano ba?
Hindi ko siya
Or yung
makita.
collated ganito.
Ayun. Ayun.
Pwede, no?
Mm-mm. Ayun, meron ka.
Madaming semicolon.
May
I
heart,
see
heart.
some heart. Yun. Pero mostly, no?
Ayun, cute. Yung
Semicolon.
para mental health. Love mental health. Parang ganun yung symbol nung isa.
Ay, ang galing. Ano ba ito? Parang M siya, tas H. Tas
M
heart.
tapos
Oh,
H tas
ang
heart.
cute. I-adapt natin yan. Pauso natin.
May naglagay din ng ribbon.
Green ribbon. Yan.
Tapos meron din yung yung science sa psychology. Tapos merong, I'm not sure if these are hands. Tapos may hawak na red something.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or flower siya.
Meron ding flower. Yan.
Ay! Oops. Sorry. Nag-fall apart na yung setup ko.
Ito yung sa psychology nga, diba? Ito.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Ito, parang naiisip ko dito yung parang yung thought bubble, tas magulo yung parang may string na tangled doon. Tas the professionals will help us untangle. Okay. Ayan. So, ang ganda naman ng mga symbols.
Ayan, thank you rin sa mga sumagot. And yes, tama nga na semicolon is one of the symbols and the green ribbon. Ayan, how do we go back to the slide? Ayan. Ayan, so we have the green ribbon na mental health and mental health awareness ribbon, and then purple and teal, which is yung suicide prevention or suicide awareness symbol na we also adopted din sa Marl Fund. Tapos yung semicolon na, ayun, pinaka-symbol kasi na semicolon is more of like how we tell the story of our lives na instead na tuldukan natin siya semicolon at magpatuloy. So yun yung parang pinaka-gist niya na sa halip na tuldukan mo yung kwento mo, ipagpatuloy mo yung kwento mo, pero okay lang magpahinga. Ayun. Ayun, tapos yung mental health bell is also another symbol na actually, Ate Love, I'm not too familiar with yung story nung yung bell, aside from yung shackles siya, di ba? Nung mga inmates,
Yes.
tama ba? Or nung mga
Mm-mm.
Tapos,
Tinunaw. Oo,
tinunaw
kasi,
lahat yung mga shackles
yes.
nila. Tapos, yun yung parang ginawang bell na shall ring out for hope for the mentally ill and victory over mental illness. Sorry, mental illness. Ayun.
Oo. Although may disclaimer din sila na sinabi nila dun sa website nitong Mental Health America na back then, nung in-inscribe yung bell, acceptable pa yung term na mentally ill. Pero language nga, evolves over time. Pero yun nga yung story, ang ganda. Kasi, di ba yung sa mga mental health asylums, the people were restrained, kinakadena sila to their beds, ganon. Pero as yung understanding of mental health grew, na-realize na that's inhumane. So, kinolect nga lahat ng mga shackles nila, mga kadena, tinunaw, tapos ginawang mental health bell.
Ayun. Tapos we have, actually, halos every month to, that we have activities with related to mental health. So February, talaga February 13 is Self-Love Day. So International Self-Love Day. So hindi lang siya parang yung pauso ng iba na ano, International Singles Day. Char. I mean yung ano, to remind ourselves that loving ourselves is a form of being able to be healthy and holistic as a person na we can love ourselves, we can love others. Parang, yeah. So, tapos March, we have International Day of Happiness and World Bipolar Day. So, these dates are part of the calendar for mental health to also remind people that there are a lot of issues with mental health. And then what's another reminder, 'di ba? Na ano, kung maalala natin ang mga tipong araw ng kagitingan at saka Labor Day, and then also reminding the self of what is to be something that can be better is also another thing na, it's also another thing to advocate for. Ayun, so then we have World Semicolon Day, as already explained, is pagpapatuloy ng kwento ng buhay natin. And then May, we have Mental Health Awareness Month, and then World Maternal Mental Health Day. Kasi one of the most ignored, hindi man ignored, pero another aspect of mental health na hindi rin masyadong napapansin is the health of mothers, especially after they've given birth, postpartum depression. It has not been given that much light. And then we have World Mental Health Awareness Day, and then sa June, we have International PTSD Awareness Day. So PTSD is loosely described as someone who has suffered a severe event and they have still reactions to it. Na parang naka-witness na accident or has been part of an accident, takot ng sumakay ng eroplano or takot ng sumakay ng tren. Some things like that na other people would think na bakit siya na nagre-react sa ganun or ganun. So it was originally coined for military people coming from war, so they have post-trauma from war. So mga nakikita yung reactions with fireworks, mga ganun. Pero they realized that it's more common pala with not just people, not just army people, not just people coming from war. Anyone who has suffered a stressful experience that is beyond their capacity to be able to cope is also considered some form of post-traumatic stress. So, ayun, another, butil ng kaalaman. So, ayun, so July, we have International Self-Care Day. And in September, so ang biggest natin, kasi nga ito rin isa sa mga pinaka-common, so we have World Suicide Prevention Month and World Suicide Prevention Day. So, because nga it's very common, it deserves a spotlight to have more people aware of it as everything else within the year. Actually, kulang pa nga to eh. So anyway, so October we have World Mental Health Day, National Mental Health Week, and then November, International Stress Awareness Day, World Kindness Day, and International Survivors of Suicide Day and Suicide Loss Survivors Day. Kasi as much as na we can do everything we can to understand about suicide, but the loss of someone from like a close friend or a family member, we are all left with questions. So we don't really know whatever happened to them, what they were thinking last. Or there are so many whys and what ifs that can never have an answer for people who have completed suicide. So we also have that after World Suicide Prevention Month. December, International Day for Disabled Persons and International Day for Volunteers. And then International Human Rights Day. So as you can see, all these significant dates can also be anchored to a certain advocacy. So if you're planning to have some form of group activity for your school or your group or your organization, you have a lot of dates to choose from. So ayun, hindi lang date ng Valentine. Char. Anyway, ayan. So, hinga-hinga muna saglit. Kasi kita ko yung mga ibang may comments, medyo sad face na sila eh. Yung mga sumasali sa activities. If you need any help later on, you can reach out to me, message me sa Facebook if you need someone to talk to after this, if you have additional questions. Or later on, after the for the open forum if you have any questions or concerns, and then we can answer it later. Ayun. So, ito, challenges in advocacy. Medyo mag-overtime tayo ng konti, nakikinita ko na. Pero anyway, I'll try not to be too fast pa rin. So, ayun. So, very few people seem interested or are interested in or open to mental health. And dito nga pumapasok kasi yung stigma na pag nag-seek out ka ng help, there must be something wrong with you or there's something that cannot be fixed about you, and that's not true. So, like for example, yung para bagtik na, yung mga ganon. So, it hinders other people from seeking help na parang na lang sasabihin ng magulang, wala naman silang anak na baliw. Yung gano'n na i-internalize, na integrate natin with our own personalities na we shouldn't be seeking help because it's seen badly by society, but it's not. So yun yung kailangan nating na kailangan na matulungan ng ibang tao, matulungan na merong other ways to express your feelings or to be able to overcome your feelings by other avenues like art, music, and then, something na to help someone na ganito yung art na na-drawing niya kasi they were expressing some form of emotion. Ganun. So, that's one challenge. And then, division and friction between different mental health advocacy groups. So, there are a lot of mental health advocacy groups. Kahit mag-search ka lang sa Facebook, you want to join a mental health support group, there would be groups that would be appearing. And then sometimes other people would want to prefer a different way of advocating or have a different view about it. And then to remove that kind of issues is to be able to open dialogues with other people na common issues and then common goals. And then even though there would be differences, na makikita mo na rin lang na we're supposed to remind each other that we have the common goal of being able to support and be able to get people to find the help they need. Ayun. So, lack of resources, hindi natin mapagkakaila na sometimes money makes the world go round. Sometimes money is the solution to most problems, sabi ni Facebook. So anyway, there are people who are available to help. So being able to know the why. So balik tayo dun sa diniscuss ni Ate Lofi na why am I advocating for this specific type of mental health concern or mental health problem, and who are the people I can tap for these kinds of issues. So and then you can apply for grants or funds, or you can know how to collaborate to be able to get those funds. So when there is a will, there is a way talaga. So, and then being able to speak up and being able to know where these safe spaces are is also another avenue for us to be able to be effective mental health advocates. Ayun. Pilipinas na tayo. Bumalik tayo sa Pilipinas. Hindi tayo umalis sa Pilipinas. So anyway, Pear Deck alert. So we have a question next. So, sa tingin nyo, mental health advocacy ba dito sa Pilipinas ay nagpo-flourish ba sa ngayon? So, maglagay lang kayo ng tuldok. And then, we'll just give you 30 seconds for this kasi agree or disagree lang naman siya.
30 seconds. Okay. Yan. Ida-drag pala yung icon.
Ay, ida-drag ba? Akala ko na.
Parang kanina din yung tuldok pero din knowing yung tuldok.
Kasi nandun pala sa gilid yung red dot tapos ida-drag mo.
Ida-drag.
Nakita ko maganda ang future ng Pear Deck para sa atin. Bet ko siya. Maganda siyang gamitin.
4, 3,
2. Ayun.
0. Answers are locked. Let's show the responses.
Ayun.
Mas madaming agree, Evie.
I was actually, thinking na hindi, pero meron isang neutral, meron isang
Ay, oo. Puwede din, 'di ba? Hindi naman
Oo,
sinabi kailangan
na i-shoot mo sa box.
bili
So,
ng isa.
good job thinking outside the box. Ayun. So, actually, parehas kami ng person na nasa gitna. Kasi, we're kind of in the cusp of getting out of how the struggle of how mental health used to be. So it's starting to flourish. Not quite flourishing yet, but we're getting there. And I'm happy that people are optimistic about this. Kaya agree tayo dyan. So, ayun. So, right now, we have institutions and organizations and prominent individuals dito sa Pilipinas. So, ayun nga. So, we have NCMH, and then PMHA, and then PPA. Shortcut natin. Pero ayun, Philippine Psychiatric Association, PAP, Natasha Goldborn Foundation, Anxiety Depression Support Philippines, ADSP, and then Youth for Mental Health Coalition Incorporated, and Your Millennial Psychologist. Parang kilala ko to. Pero so, ayun, so we start from, there are really big organizations that yung para centralized yung health natin dito sa Pilipinas, and then nag-trickle down siya. So, meron tayong mga influencers, bloggers, and organizations like us. So, ayan. Is number 9 sa akin din? Or sa'yo yun, Ate Lofi?
Ay akin na ata 'to.
Ayan, so, napaisip ako
Last
kasi
naman
parang
na.
may tumatakbong pusa sa likod ko. Anyway, lumilipad sila. So, ayun. So, you can take note of these institutions and organizations. So, you know where you can get more information that are reliable, and for other people to be able to also learn for themselves. Ayun. So, Ate Lofi.
Ayun. So, salamat and let's go on. Ayan. So, mag-overtime tayo ng konti pero this is the last ano na kasi, last topic. Okay. So, we have examples of good practices in advocacy around the world. So, gusto natin na meron din naman tayong mapagbabasehan or maybe inspiration pag tayo nang nag-advocate. Makita natin yung mga magandang naggawa nila sa ibang bansa. Ayan. So it's always good to look at the best practices. So hindi ko na sinama lahat nung countries. So I picked out yung mga medyo malapit ang experience sa Philippines, so mga developing countries. Okay, so isa na doon ang Brazil. So meron silang Advocacy Office for Rights, Mental Health and Citizenship established in 1997. Wow. And they provide housing, counseling, and mediation. So parang itong um, office na ito is a joint collaborative program by Sao Paulo University and their public health district. So parang partnership siya. And good example ito kasi they protect yung rights ng people with mental disorders in a developing country kung saan those who have disorders are at greater risk of being discriminated against. Ito kasi yung kapag sa developing country, we have poor socioeconomic conditions that make people more at risk of being discriminated against. So maganda na meron silang pabahay, ayan, para dun sa mga tao doon. And then sa Italy din naman, well, not a developing country, but maganda itong nagawa nila na consumer-run enterprises provide work for persons with the most disabling and discriminated mental disorder. So parang may batas na ginawa that enabled itong mga businesses na run by people with mental disorders to flourish, and these cooperatives, they successfully compete with local businesses in the open market. And so maganda din ito kasi not only do these businesses protect the rights of the people, pero they support then each other to satisfy their basic needs, which is getting income, 'di ba? So they can support themselves. So next naman is Uganda. Ito maganda din 'to. So meron yung Uganda Schizophrenia Fellowship na isang NGO which is supported by the World Schizophrenia Fellowship, um, ano pala siya, World Fellowship for Schizophrenia and Allied Disorders. So, ang ginagawa nila ay bumibisita sila talaga sa bahay. Yan, home visits, counseling, health education, through seminars, psychodrama, music, and homes. And they also teach people with mental disorders new skills in their communities like paggawa ng mats or tablecloths na pwede din nilang ibenta. Ayan. So it's something that would keep them busy and productive, then they could earn from them as well. So maganda itong example of like an international NGO helping out local advocacy. And this is the last one. So for Mexico naman, the Mexican Foundation for Rehabilitation of People with Mental Disorders, established in 1980. O, diba? Talagang, um, ano na sila, advanced sila mag-isip ng mga panahon na yun. Uh, Meron naman silang psychosocial rehabilitation. They have built day centers, halfway houses, making it possible to close the state psychiatric hospitals. Ito yung issue ng deinstitutionalization, yung um, parang rather than keep the people, those who have mental disorders separate from society, di ba? Kasi kapag i-institutionalize mo sila, yun, parang they're far removed from society, from reality. Gusto nila na mas integrated pa rin yung mga tao sa community nila. So yun, so they were able to close down the psychiatric hospital there. Um, and yung mga tao pumupunta na lang dito sa mga day center and halfway houses, providing maybe even better level of support and treatment. And they also denounce, ayan, isa siya sa advocacy actions natin, di ba? They denounce institutions in relation to human rights violations in Mexican psychiatric hospitals. And yung mga hindi ko na nabanggit, meron din dyan ng Australia, Spain, and Mongolia. Dun sa ating trial paradex session, di ba, meron tayong drag the pointer to kung saan, where you think may good practices in advocacy. So any of those answers would have been correct. Ayan. So that ends our module. Pero hindi pa dyan nag-e-end ang ating activity kasi, okay, so sa aming mga in-person events noon, pre-pandemic, we sometimes have this freedom wall. So we have, parang ano lang siya, tarp lang. Ayan, kasi ipopost namin dun sa may door and then people could write anything. So it could be message for mental health warriors or your key takeaways from the event. You can draw, you can put your name. Lofi was here, mga ganyan. Anything you want to draw on our freedom wall, we'll do that. And hindi na natin ipapakita yung mga ginawa natin, but we will compile them into a single file and then post them later on in our page para makita nating lahat. Okay? So here is our freedom wall. Ayun. So maraming salamat sa pag-join ng ating workshop.